Now, I should not have to point this out, but spoilers for the Rise of Skywalker. Turn the video off now if you have somehow avoided spoilers until this point. To start with, let's talk about Rey being the granddaughter of Palpatine. There are several theories about how Rey being his granddaughter is possible. However, every YouTuber commenting on this now fact about when he had a child seems to indicate this happened sometime after Revenge of the Sith. However, I believe this happened before Episode 1 sometime. I believe Palpatine slept with many women in his early days, playing the Bruce Wayne card, playing heartthrob playboy in public while playing Sith Lord in the shadows. If that is true, then here is my theory on how Rey is possible. Before Phantom Menace, he courted a mistress or two. After a night of partying with a group of elites of the Republic, he drank and partied too much. He could have slept with a woman, getting her pregnant. That is my theory, because that is all we have at this time. But the woman probably was a no one. She was more likely a spy or a thief, which means she probably gave the baby up upon his birth. And if she kept the child, retired from a life of crime. I think she was most likely to give up the child, not realizing how important the child was until after Palpatine became Emperor. She probably learned all about him while she tracked down their child, which was a young man at this time. She maybe learned he was a Sith, rushed to warn the child. The former expanded universe, or Legends as it's called now, the Sith used more than the Force. They used magic. She probably learned Palpatine could use the life force of their heir to live longer or forever. He probably was in a relationship at the time. Him and his girlfriend spent the next several years running, changing their name. Around this time of the Empire, his son probably married that woman. By the time Palpatine tells Vader about Luke, he reached so far out into the Force, he felt more than just another Skywalker. He felt someone who was connected to him, another Palpatine. At this point, he probably dispatched a hunter to find and take care of his offspring. He wanted the man to bring him back alive so he could steal the life force. But if Palpatine wanted him dead, it was because he saw him as a threat to his power. One thing I can say that best fits all of this is that humans from Naboo must have a natural lifespan of 200 years. Now this is an issue I have with this universe. Everyone assumes that all human-looking characters are just like people from Earth. But in Legends, there were more humanoids on tons of different worlds. However, Corellia seems to be the Star Wars Earth. Look at Episode 1 and 2. Padme hardly changes in the 10-year gap. However, Obi-Wan and Anakin both look older. But she doesn't hardly look like she's aged a day. In fact, the two actors that played Padme and Anakin were the same age. Think about that. Just because they look human does not make them just like us or each other. So Palpatine's son could have looked 30 for some time, but been pushing 50 or 60 years old. Hell, we know Palpatine looks the way he does after Episode 3, just something to consider upon a rewatch. This would all explain the reasons why Rey's father never used the Force. The story is very common. Woman sleeps with a man, gets pregnant, leaves the man before he wakes, then has a child, and the man doesn't find out until 20 plus years later. Okay, so next I'm going to explain something I cannot believe people even argue about. People question how Palpatine could be alive. Well, first off, he was not cut in half like Darth Maul. We know Force users can levitate. We also know Force lightning doesn't really hurt him. So how did he survive the Death Star blowing up? Quite simple. He was not on the Death Star. When it blew up? How is that possible? So glad you asked. The shaft he was thrown into most likely had maintenance doors. Palpatine clearly used his power to levitate to a door, getting burned up, then went through the door, found some guard that led him to an emergency shuttle, which he used to get to the nearest Star Destroyer. Then he ordered them to take off to Exegol. Then, as his last official act, he used Operation Cinder in an attempt to cover his tracks. The world of Exegol was a world with billions of followers, already constructing a massive fleet of reserve ships, which now a lot of people ask, did Palpatine have time? Well, just using Return of the Jedi as a base for this theory, let's look at that. Luke had to help Vader up to the lift, then down the hall to the shuttle bay. Now, a normal person, that might not be much time, but Vader was dying, hobbling, stumbling. Not to mention, he's mostly a machine. A machine which was glitching and damaged due to the Force lightning. Vader probably weighed 3 or 4 times as much as Luke. It would have taken Luke a little longer to get his father to the shuttle. My friend and I discussed it at length. The amount of time it would probably have taken would be 30 to 45 minutes. Then to top it off, they had their little heart-to-heart talk on the ramp as Vader was dying. Luke then had to pull him the rest of the way onto the shuttle. Then he had to prep the shuttle and take off as Lando finally leads and shoots the reactor. This would have given Palpatine plenty of time to get rushed off the Death Star. We can see evidence of this after. Once the Death Star is blown up, the remaining Star Destroyers are gone. Remember, Lando makes a point to say they will last longer against the Star Destroyers rather than the Death Star, when Akbar tells him they won't last long against the Star Destroyers. Well, they managed to take out a few, but they lost a good portion of their own forces, which gives Han the time to get the shields down. Once the shields are down, they fly into the second Death Star to blow it up. However, after the Death Star was blown up, they're gone. So as you can see from The Rise of Skywalker, he is damaged and barely alive. How did he rebuild his fleet? Again, the Sith cultist. There are over 7 billion people on Earth. Do the math. If there was a secret world that viewed the Sith as gods and they did anything they were told, they could have had plenty of time and resources and manpower to build ships and train soldiers. The Red Guards could have been Sith cultists from Exegol. Thing is, most stories, we start with a main villain and we end with that final defeat of that villain. If Palpatine was not the main villain of the series, who else? Vader was dead. We saw the body. In fact, this series, that seems to be a major point. Maul was cut in half, yet he survived after Episode 1. No one cared this much. In fact, Clone Wars is a well-liked series. Palpatine was old, yes, but very powerful. Voldemort was nearly killed off before the Harry Potter books even began, and the Harry Potter world still feared his return, not knowing what happened to him. Just something to consider. So many times in stories we have the villain arrange to fake his own death, or have a backup plan in case. Now this is purely a theory, and one I believe, if true, can be a good setup for a prequel series. What if we find out Darth Bane set up the rule of 2 not to help the Sith Order, but to turn himself into a Sith god, collecting power from body hopping, taking on the name of the person that killed him. So while we thought this was Palpatine, in reality, it was the spirit of Darth Bane. That would explain the reason why basically each Sith Master would tell his pupil all about the Rule of Two, which does happen in Legends. I read the Darth Plagueis novel, and in the Darth Plagueis novel, Darth Plagueis' master told him, flat out, "You will turn against me one day." Finally, I want to address Exegol and the problem people have with the Red Nebula thing and the Wayfinder. So this is how I see it. A lot of Star Wars is based on fantasy. Wizards, knights, etc., etc. Think of the Red Nebula as they were flying through a magical maze. What if I told you you could travel from one side of Earth to the other in an hour? Or you could take a plane, which will take you longer. You would go through the magic maze to get across faster. It was clear that Exegol was way out in the unknown region. The Wayfinder was a magic compass that guided people through the maze. Now, Ben probably made a map as he flew through, storing it for later use, to use with the First Order. So once through, he really no longer needed the Wayfinder. Rey probably did the same thing. In fact, I can tell you she did. Which is better, a compass or a map? Once the good guys had the map, they could transmit that around the galaxy, calling in everyone to aid them. This kind of stuff is used so much in science fiction. It's not even funny. Babylon 5, hyperspace. Stargate, the Stargates. Star Trek, wormholes. Or even a better example, transwarp conduits. Anyone that has seen Voyager knows what I mean. The point is this. It's not really that far out to believe. Even more so that it fits the fantasy element of Star Wars. As for saying Disney never thought Palpatine was going to come back, I have to call bull on that one for starters. It was in Legend. It is part of the lore, where he returned as a clone. Everyone was so mad when Disney said they were doing away with the expanded universe lore. In fact, it makes more sense that Palpatine is alive over Darth Maul. There are so many theories that Rey could have been a Palpatine after The Force Awakens came out. Video where he talked about her fighting style and how it perfectly mirrored Palpatine, who was the only other character that fought that way. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Link below. Hell, I thought they were going to make her a hybrid clone of Anakin and Palpatine, which, granted, would have been cooler, but I'm fine with what we got. And it works perfectly with the great end of this series. Confused? Don't know what I mean? Well, check this out. Lucas, as everyone should be aware, wanted the story to rhyme. And this ending, if Disney doesn't screw it up, has a picture-perfect end. So after Rey is brought back by Ben, notice where he holds his hand. I think not meaning to, he accidentally impregnates her with a forced baby. The kiss was not a kiss of love, but of deep gratitude, because she could feel the life inside her. Ben really had no options. He was going to die either way. At least he gave his life to save her. But, in that process, accidentally gave her a bit more than that. Now here is why it's a perfect ending. As the internet is well aware in the comics, they revealed Palpatine used the Force to impregnate Anakin's mother. If you can't tell where I'm going with this, let me spell it out for you. A Palpatine made a Palpatine/Skywalker to begin the story. A Skywalker made a Palpatine/Skywalker to finish the story. This connection explains a lot and continues the family line for the future. As I end this video, I would like to tell everyone, the clues are right in the movies. It just takes a little thinking and knowledge to piece them together. If you like reading a good fantasy story for teens and adults, then check out my series, The Guardian of Light. It's an epic modern day fantasy that will spark the inner child in any adult. It is available on Amazon and other platforms. Thank you, and until my next video.